Hi everyone, it's Victor speaking, and today I'm here with Josie. Many of you asked me to do a video on Australia because you wanted to know how to see all the situation, what's going on in there, and also you wanted me to make a little bit of a prediction of what's coming for Australia. So I've collaborated with Josie, who is again a great student of mine, and we are going to be analyzing the chart a little bit for you. And I'm really hoping this is going to help. And also, I just want to say in advance that I'm praying for Australia, that they are going to be in good hands in the upcoming year. So, hi, Josie, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Awesome.
So, where are you tuning in from?
Canada.
Okay,
Chilliwack, Canada. Near
yeah.
Vancouver for people who don't know where that is, but
Great. So let's get started. Take it away then.
okay, so one of the first things we wanted to look at was what actually caused the fires in Australia. So looking into this, I wanted to look at not only just how fires actually start, but what made this year in particular so powerful and devastating. We know that 27 people have lost their lives, 12 million acres of land have been destroyed, and over 1 billion animals have been lost, which that is a heartbreaking number. So when I looked at their chart, the techniques that spoke to me the most about what was going on was their solar return chart and combining that with perfection. So this was interesting because Australia was in an 11th house perfected year in 2019. I know we're in 2020 now. So we know the 11th house as being a house that relates to collaborations. It's a charitable house, rules organizations, groups, mass media, the internet, global scale news. And these things were all for sure at the forefront or a theme of Australia for this year. But what was interesting to me is that when you use derivative houses, which is counting houses from whatever house you're inquiring about, the 11th house is the 8th house from the 4th house. The 8th house from any house talks about the death, rebirth, transformation, crisis of that house, in this case, the home or the homeland, which really speaks on a different level about what this 11th house perfected year means. So it's definitely another indication of a powerful year for that. Which leads me to their solar return chart of 2019, where their solar return ascendant is in the sign of Capricorn. So we know from the 11th house perfected year that the transits of Saturn and Uranus are going to be important as it is. We have Uranus transiting their first house, and we have Saturn transiting their 10th house. And now we have their solar return ascendant in the sign of Capricorn. So Saturn is really having a powerful influence this year. It's especially powerful because it's conjunct the solar return ascendant exactly. It's conjunct their natal sun and solar return sun, obviously, within a 1-degree orb, and their natal Saturn in a 4-degree orb. So they're also having a Saturn return. Also, in addition to this, the ascendant, solar return ascendant, is aligning with the midhaven in the natal chart, which is another indicator of a significant year. And then, of course, we have Pluto transiting Capricorn and that conjunction happening near their midhaven.
Exactly. If some of you might not know what these planets are, then Saturn usually brings dryness to think. It's a cold and dry planet. And Sun is also a very, very dry energy, but also it's very hot because just think about summer. Who likes going outside in the middle of the day to get burnt? And Capricorn again talks about dryness. Now, as Josie mentioned, we've got Pluto there, which is talking about demolishing things, destroying things. And we also have got the South Node there, which talks about emptying things out. So this might be already an indication, for instance, if we wanted to make a weather forecast for 2019, that it could be a very hot year. And that hotness could be causing some, you know, some disaster as well. Unfortunately, Pluto usually brings crisis situations. Whatever it touches in your chart, you're gonna feel that strongly.
Yeah, so we're seeing, you know, multiple indications of the eighth house energy coming in. And then, like you said, Saturn and Sun, they're both sitting right on the ascendant too. And Saturn and Sun are known as enemies. Like you said, the Sun is very hot and dry. Saturn is cold, it's heavy, it's dry. And these two don't already like each other. And you have that right on the solar return ascendant. And Saturn's also a very karmic planet that can be very, very harsh. So, and like you said, in the sign of Capricorn, it's a very barren sign. So all these factors are really contributing to a powerful season of drought. And actually, when the sign of Capricorn is activated using monthly perfections, that was in the month of December. So there's no surprise that they had record-breaking drought that lasted over a week long in this month, actually. And
the reason why Josie mentioned December is because, as she said, she's in the country is in an 11th house year. So every single month is going to be starting in the house what you are in the given year. So they are in an 11th house year, and then the year is going to be starting there, and that's going to be January. And then if you go in zodiacal order, you're going to be getting to Capricorn, which is the month of December. I've also noticed, because I do like working with fixed stars, and I've noticed that there is Chiron bang on something called Shiat. And Shiat talks about natural disasters. And Chiron is actually the asteroid of wounds. And it is happening in the natal 12th house, which again, a house of loss, house of charities, and actually it rules the bigger animals as well. So that's also a very powerful combination here, sign.
Mm-hmm. Also, with the solar return ascendant, the Sun rules the eighth house in that solar return chart. So this is more eighth house energy coming in of crisis, death, rebirth, transformation. And again, this peaked in December. On a more positive side note, the eighth house also rules the resources of others. Leo is a very generous sign. And we know that Saturn rules time and longevity. So we can see that through this crisis, that there's a lot of people donating time, money, and resources. And because Sun and Capricorn are also indicators of career, this is also related to those people in those eighth house fields, such as crisis and first response workers. And we can see that they're really putting in a lot of long hours, commitment, and hard work. So a shout out to those people in particular, because I can even see in the chart that they put in a lot of exhaustive effort in regards to this crisis.
Yeah, Capricorn talks about hard work and tiredness. And when the rising sign falls into there, then it just means that the whole country is going to be working very hard in the upcoming year. Capricorn talks about hardship. So even if we were not able to predict, let's say last year, that there was going to be a natural disaster, I would have comfortably said that the country is going to be working hard to be able to stand up. And because it triggers the 10th house, it does also show that the country has been going through a political situation as well. Now, I'm going to be totally honest. I don't know much about the situation in Australia in regards to politics. And I'm not a huge fan of politics anyway, because I feel like they poison my life. But this chart just shows that politically, there is also a crisis situation going there. People might feel restricted with their Saturn, because there's also Sun there, which is a representation of government. And having Saturn there is like their hands are tied up somehow. And South Node is there, which is talking about maybe some of the politicians have resigned, or actually it might be an indication that they will resign because they cannot cope with the pressure, again, very Capricorn energy, what they will receive from the public. Yes, it's a very unfortunate situation, but I think you've really summarized well what could have caused the fire.
Yeah,
There are
so
some type of rumors that it might have been an arson. Do you think it's true, astrologically
um,
speaking?
so there was two other things that I seen when looking at how these fires could have started.
Okay.
Um, one of them could be related to criminal activity. Using the perfected month again, we would fall in the sign of Libra in September, and that's when it started being more publicized in the media, when it was actually declared like a crisis. Libra is a legal sign. The ruler of Libra in the natal chart is conjunct Uranus. Uranus can rule criminals, and in the solar return, it's falling in the 12th house of hidden enemies in the sign of Sagittarius, so maybe it could even be around some belief system, or it can talk about just reckless behavior because Uranus is that. And then we know that lightning was a factor in these fires as well. And just to show how you can see that in the natal chart, Venus again has a conjunction with Uranus in the sign of Sagittarius, and it's conjunct that solar return Jupiter. If we look at combining the qualities of these planets again, we have a hot, dry planet, a hot, wet planet, and a planet known as the ice giant, which also rules electricity. And lightning, actually, I looked into this, it was interesting. Lightning is actually formed by frozen raindrops bumping into each other, creating electrical charge. And a cold front hits the warm air and pushes it up where it holds moisture. So this is literally, you can see the conditions of, how like that lightning could have been a factor as well.
Yes. Do you think if it was an arson, it would have been a foreigner? Having Venus in the 9th house.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I'm not 100% sure. I haven't read about it. But if it was relating to arson, then I would say it was by a foreigner.
I could totally agree with that. I know that they did arrest, I think it was 20 something people that were intentionally setting fires, and then they issued, kind of, what's the word? Like people got in shit basically for recklessly starting them. So there's a number of those people as well. So both reckless and criminal behavior, which that conjunction talks about both of those.
And also, Sagittarius talks about court cases as well. So as you said, Libra rules any type of criminal offense, and Sagittarius is something similar as well. So it might be an indication, but because it happens in the 9th house, and 9th house rules gossips, rules publications. I've also have got the feeling that the media really picked this up with the Jupiter. Jupiter enlarges everything, whatever it touches. And I think plenty of lies are also spread around it.
Yeah, because that opposition to Pluto and Neptune implies there could be manipulation there or hidden facts or illusions around that as well.
Exactly. And that Pluto would be suggesting actually that someone else is gaining power out of this situation. It's like whether it was a criminal act or it was a natural disaster, someone is gaining out of that. Someone is gaining power. Yes, and usually oppositions talk about projections. Usually they involve a third party. So let's say there is the country, there is the fire, and there might be a third element involved in the situation as well. So to give you an example, I don't know, I've got relationship problems, and then it can be seen with an opposition. It is an indication of someone else is involved in the story as well. It's like someone is whispering into your ear that, oh, this is not the right partner for you. This is how we should be imagining this Pluto opposition to Venus and Uranus.
So it's like the devil on your shoulder.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Or even the devil card in Tarot. Two people, Adam and Eve, are all chained up to the devil. So it's like I'm giving you freedom to a certain extent, but I can take it back at any time. And
Hmm.
this is exactly how, for instance, the government seems to be like, with all that tight energy around the sun. Um, well, this is an astrological interpretation. And yeah, we're only going to share what we see. And this is what I feel about Australia so far. What do you think about 2020 for Australia?
So 2020, they're going to be in a 12th house perfected year, which is Pisces for them. So I did look up what was going on for them 12 years ago when they were in a 12th house perfected year. And it was interesting because a lot of the headline news lines involved things that had to do with water, shocker. So there was torrential rain and there was flooding. There was the first passenger flight from Australia to Antarctica, which Antarctica is very isolated, which is again Piscean. Um, there was an incident where a Sea Shepherd activist, which is defending Antarctica and the whaling there, was detained on a Japanese whaling ship, which again, whales, Piscean. There was an explosion in a wine processing shed. Uranus happened to be going through Pisces at the time, so that one was interesting. There was deepening of their shipping channels. There was an apology for a stolen generation made by a politician, which was a really big deal, which also has to do with compassion and healing. There was a fishing boat accident that killed 5 people. There was the world's biggest ecstasy bust where they seized $440 million worth of the drug. So these are all, very Piscean type of topics. For this year in particular, their solar return ascendant is falling in Pisces as well. So now we have double activation of this sign. And this is starting in January. So you can already see, the healing and the compassion of the homeland, especially with the moon there. Neptune and moon are exactly conjunct in that ascendant. And that's exactly what they're doing. And a lot of people are showing them a lot of love and compassion. And this is also very feminine and spiritual type of combination. So healing that land and a lot of people being compassionate and helping them with that. The moon falls in their second house of their natal chart. So I think that there can be some developments around renewable resources for them this year, that people might start demanding that or wanting that to shift or change, because Pisces is immutable energy. So this year is already talking about change, mutable signs change. I also think that this year we will start to see the youth of Australia starting to oppose the government in a lot of ways, especially through media and protesting. I believe that they're the ones that are going to be pushing change in this year in an effort to heal their country. And, they want to have longevity. So they're thinking about their futures as well. I also think there's going to be a struggle between possibly political media and the people. If there's manipulation or misconception there, or subconscious programming that's coming from the media, I think the people are going to start to call out the government. They're going to start to rebel and fight for right information. The people are going to become a little bit more powerful and demanding, I believe. And when I was looking at this, I kept hearing the phrase, like the government's playing God. And in this solar return chart, the 10th house which rules government, is falling in Sagittarius, which rules God and spirituality as well. So I think they're trying to manipulate and control their people through media, and there's going to be some kind of developments around that. With Pluto going to be approaching their MC, like you said, I don't know too much about Australian politics, but I feel like there's going to be a bit of a political earthquake happening. And I think that might have already started to happen. Same with all these issues that I think these people are going to want to be addressed. I think a lot of that started with this crisis and this energy of what's happening in Capricorn might have already sparked things like, why don't we have, you know, things in place to deal with these things, or, you know, using renewable energy, some of these things could be avoided, things like that. I also think, I know that there was some big developments around abortion last year, and that there's only one part of Australia left where it's still illegal. But I think this issue is going to come up again, and there could be some tension or challenges around this that come up for sure. I think we're going to see some developments in foreign trade, shipping as well, with that 12th house energy. And I think that given what happened 12 years ago with the interest in Antarctica, I think, especially because the ruler of Pisces is in, you know, the very adventurous, traveling, explorative sign of Sagittarius, I think that we're going to see some developments too, possibly happening around Antarctica, and maybe some discoveries being made, or some further exploration of what's going on there.
I just want to comment on a couple of things there, because I do believe that there might be some protests. So as we said, the rising sign is representing the behavior of the country, which is Pisces. And Pisces really talks about compassionate love. And yeah, it talks about losses, it talks about spirituality, and we've got that moon and Neptune around it, which is really much making this country very flooded. Now, whether it is in a literal sense or just figuratively speaking, but the flood really comes through in this chart. And actually, because we've got two planets being very close to the rising sign, it might be an indication of two floods. We might be talking about two emotional breakthrough from the people, because the moon rules people. And I do believe that having Jupiter in the 11th house in the solar return chart, because Pisces in traditional astrology is ruled by Jupiter, is just going to be ending up with protests against the government, because the government might feel that we don't have the necessary tools to do something about it, and people won't take that. I also believe that because there is still Shiat being very close to that rising sign, again, it is an indication of catastrophes, natural disasters. So it might not be the last one, unfortunately, for Australia. 12th house talks about foreign countries. And as Josie said, mutable energy is like gathering information. It talks about changes. So I think the people there are kind of getting aware of the need of a change in the country, and that might end up in protests and so forth. But I also believe that the country is going to get together in a way, because they are going to be going through major losses. And it's not just through natural disasters, but I also believe it's going to be something to do with political losses as well. They might lose someone they adore, or they might lose someone who was always there for them. And we're talking about a hierarchy figure here. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I can tell you my point of view on this, so I won't. But if you know, I think you get what I'm trying to say here. And I also think there is gonna be something to do with visas as well, because there is moon, which is the people, and then it's square in the midheaven, which is the country's direction. And it's falling into the 9th house, which rules documents, which rules visas. So I think they are going to make that, they are going to restrict people being able to leave or come in. Yes. Did you spot anything else in regards to Australia?
Well, as you were saying that, the moon rules the fifth house in the solar return chart, and it is conjunct Neptune. So there could be even, some losses around speculative gains, things like that. Like you said, too, if there, is going to be any repetition of this kind of thing like this year, I also feel that it would be more related to water for sure. And the specific time periods that stood out to me the most of when this could happen are between November and December, as well as July.
Yes, that's why I brought up a transit calendar for Australia, because it might be very storyteller. So we can see from here that Pluto and the midheaven is going to be lost in the whole year. So there seems to be something going on in March, which might be just a sign of what's coming towards the end of the year. And June, there is going to be something to do with the revisiting the same subject basically. And then December, January, February, it looks like that would be the time of resolution when people want to act on it. And as we said, Pluto is a demolishing crisis situation type of energy. And the midheaven talks about where I am heading in this country. Who are we? How we want to be seen by others. And these can be very, very important topics. Also, I've seen that the Neptune and the moon, the transit in Neptune is going to be sextile in the moon actually from April till September. So anything to do with flooding, July, August, as you said, could be an important month there because way too much water element going on. And interestingly enough, that's when Pluto is also has got a very active period as well, which talks about crisis situation. Yeah, and then going just a little bit down, we can see that even Jupiter and Mars is going to be having a little bit of a debate going on. Now, going back just to the natal chart, Mars, they've got that in the sixth house, which is the house of crisis again. The debates. Virgo is all about serving others and rules animals as well. So unfortunately, it looks like they might have got one more year coming up, which is a little bit terrible. And actually, Virgo, if I'm not mistaken, on top of my head, it rules tsunamis.
Mm.
That might also be in the picture. I'm really hoping, I'm really hoping, and I'm really praying that what we are predicting here is none of them true. Believe me, I would be happy about it. But the energies tend to be speaking towards those subjects. Yes, do you have anything else in regards to Australia? What's important to be mentioned?
Well, I did look into the loss of this significant amount of animals. And actually what I noticed was the last time they had a pretty significant fire in the year of 2009, and they were in a first house perfected year. And in that year, the death toll of people was a lot higher. There was still a lot of death of animals, but it just makes more sense being the first house. If we're talking about the 11th house, this can also rule, like bigger animals, exotic animals, things like that. So we're having that as well. If we look at their ascendant ruler, it's Mars. It's in the sign of Virgo, which actually speaks a lot about their animals and their ecosystem in general. I know I went on a flight there and they nitpick you before you even get off the plane. They have this big speech about how ecologically sensitive it is and how much shit you get in if you bring in anything in weird and so it's very particular, narrow, specific, and the kinds of animals they have too with Mars is the apex of that T-squared. So we have Pluto, we have Mars, we have Uranus. Mars being in the house of animals, like Mars can be violent. It talks about sharp things. Sharks have sharp teeth. They have a snail there that has a harpoon. It has a weapon. And even the kangaroos, they box each other. So this is all like very Mars energy. So I found that was really interesting. But in terms of the loss, the huge loss of how many animals died this year, unfortunately, that T-square was activated in a few different ways, involving the planet of Pluto, death, Neptune, loss, and opposing that sixth house ruler conjunct Jupiter. A large amount of those animals were lost, which was
Very
really
unfortunate.
devastating. Yeah.
When we have a look at the solar return chart, it's always worth having a look at if there is any planet on critical degrees. Now, Mars being on the borderline, it's almost on 29 degrees. And Mars is actually the ruler of the chart, basically rules the whole nation. So it looks like the whole nation is angry and frustrated. And they feel the strength as well because Mars is being in Scorpio. And Scorpio is a sign which is building up the tension within themselves for such a long time, and then it just explodes. When the last straw hits the glass effect, basically. And that Mars might be very, very prominent as well. And this time it's going to be in the 9th house, which is actually something to do with foreign countries. I'm really hoping this is not true, but it could be an indication of terror attack also. I'm really hoping that's not the case. Yes, what I really loved is that Australia showed us people how to get together and do something noble. My Facebook is just all about those poor animals and what they do about it. And they risk their own life to save them and so forth. And I think it's very noble. And I think on the very first day when this event happened, Pink donated a huge amount of money to Australia. And what I found very interesting is that couple of days later, people started actually doing the same. And I really salute Pink for it. Do you think this charitable side of hers is visible in her chart? I'm going to just bring that up because I think I've got that. I tend to be using her chart when I teach. Here you go.
I think it's very noticeable. And it's interesting even the way you worded that she was the first one, because even in her career, in her life, we've seen her be, she's coined as a trailblazer for other people in her field and things like that. So of course, that applies here as well. She's also often described as a powerhouse, which when I seen her chart, I laughed because she has that Pluto opposition moon right on her midhaven. So that was interesting. But in terms of her charitable side, the things that stood out to me the most was obviously Neptune and her ascendant. So Neptune can rule compassion, empathy, self-sacrificing, faith, belief, things like that. On the lower end, it can rule drug addiction, escapism, confusion, loss of direction, things like that. And we've seen both of those sides from her in her younger years. She manifested more of the lower vibration of Neptune in the ascendant, and now we see her manifesting the higher.
I think that happened because of that Neptune Sun square. Basically, Neptune being the planet of confusion, Sun is all about identity. She didn't know who she was. I think because 10th house is a parenting house, I think she really wanted to please her parents. And somehow in the middle, she lost her personality. And then it became like a rebel from her end. You know what, I'm going to show you a different personality. And maybe that's where the lower end of Neptune really kicks in.
Well, that's interesting because I know that her musical inclinations and things like that did come from her father, but she came from a family of divorce, which I think was really traumatizing. And especially, you know, Neptune co-rules that fourth house, but she's basically taken on this role as, you know, being someone who's breaking the boundaries of the traditional roles of women in society. And she's very upfront and outspoken about that. Not that she has an angst towards women, but just that, you know, she thinks that, like, you know, she made a song mocking other celebrities about you don't have to be stupid to, you know, be noticed, or you don't have to act cute. You can just like be a badass and still be feminine. So I think that talks a lot about that as well.
Yes, and you know what, with all that Virgo traits, she looks like she's a perfectionist. And
Mm.
if you think about, just on a side note, Madonna, she's got 5 planets in Virgo as well, in the first house.
Mhm.
Maybe it means that Virgos are pioneers. Um,
I did want to mention that because I know that one of Pink's idols was Madonna, actually. And
oh,
these
was
two,
she?
yeah, and these two women have a lot in common. They both lasted for a really, really long time. They've outlasted all these people who just kind of come and go, you know, so there's this longevity about them as well. And it's just interesting. It was interesting that that's one of her idols and they share a lot of similarities.
I only like Pink's music. I'm not such a big fan of Madonna, if I really want to be honest, but that's only between you and me.
Yeah. See, with Pink,
Yes.
I'm not like the hugest fan of her music. There's certain songs. It's more like her personality that I'm in love with. And like that, you know, she's so philosophical and, you know, the way she speaks about things and breaks things down and doesn't budge like with around her beliefs and things like that. I really admire her for that. But her music is, you know, hit or miss for me, but her
What I
personality.
admire about Pink is actually her parenting skills.
Hmm.
Obviously, I only can see what I can see on TV and so forth, but her parenting skills seem to be like fantastic. And you know, I wish I had a parent like that. I always have got that feeling when I see her with her child. Oh yeah, it just melts in my heart. But
Yeah.
yeah, hey, Virgo can be a little bit strict and showing cold shoulder as well. So God
I
knows,
actually
but on
seen this
TV,
I seen this interview with her and I laughed because I had already seen her chart at that point. And she said, you know, like my oldest kid, which is her daughter, so that's fifth house, she said she uses psychological warfare and she has that moon and Pluto opposition there. So I laughed when I heard her say that. I'm like, that's so funny.
great.
But yeah, so obviously that Virgo stellium is talking a lot about, you know, like her compassion, especially towards animals, her, you know, being a person of service, things like that.
Thank you very much, Josie, for joining me today.
Thank
Um,
you so much for having me.
I think it
Victor, I was
was
going to ask you,
great.
do you think we should can we put a link of if you want to donate money to Australia, can we put that in the description box in case people want to do
Yes,
that?
of course, I can do that. I've already done my donation. And guys, if you feel it's necessarily, I know plenty of countries out there are in trouble. And I know that when you donate money, you're going to have to make a wise decision. But as I said, what I like about Australia is that they seem to be pulling together so that they can save their country. And there's just something which calls my heart mad, basically.
For
So
sure.
thank you very much. We pray for Australia. Go and save your country, and good luck for the future. And I'm really hoping what we predicted is not gonna come true. And thank you for Josie to
Thank
share
you for
her
having
light
me.
on us. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a lovely day. Bye bye.